Coming to you from an undisclosed location deep in the heart of the Santa Monica Mountains, I'm your intrepid host, L.A. Marzulli, and this is Politics, Prophecy, and a Supernatural Report. I was speaking at yet another conference recently, and I asked the audience, how many of you think we're better off now than we were before the events of 9/11? Folks, not a hand went up, not one. There's a lot going on right now as we're headed toward an election cycle, and I believe our nation hangs in the balance with who will lead us for the next 4 years. We are at a crossroads, and if by some chance Hillary Clinton actually gets to sit in the Oval Office, I would posit it will be the end of America as we know it. Meanwhile, we are surrounded by increasing earthquakes. Think about the flurry of tremblers in the Salton Sea. This latest series of quakes, as scientists and seismologists saying that the big one might happen soon. I've discussed this numerous times. California, in my opinion, is on borrowed time. We haven't had a major earthquake since the Northridge quake, which happened in 1994. A major earthquake similar to what happened in Japan would wipe out Los Angeles, perhaps most of the San Fernando Valley, which is home to millions of people. If a tsunami like the one that happened at Fukushima Prefecture 5 years ago happened near Los Angeles, it could be very, very devastating. Then there's the San Onofre nuclear reactor. May I remind you that Japan and TEPCO, which is the company responsible for this Fukushima Daiichi nuclear plant, announced that they had no idea where the fuel rods from reactor 4 were. In other words, the fuel rods have burnt through the containment and are headed to parts unknown. Added to the threat of earthquakes, we have what seems to be an ever-increasing volcanic activity. What happens if a supervolcano like the one in Yellowstone blows? What if the Katla volcano, which is located in Iceland, rears its ugly head? The threat is real, and yet most people don't want to hear about any of this. Jesus warned us of what to look for before his second coming, before he would return again. To most folks, his words are ignored, and in some cases, people are ignorant of them altogether. That being stated, Jesus told us there would be earthquakes in various places. There would be famines and pestilence. There would be wars and rumors of wars. At this moment, Damascus may be a ruinous heap. It's very, very difficult to get intel about what is really going on in the city. I've shown this footage before, but I'll do so again so you can see for yourself what is happening to the surrounding area around Damascus.
My brother's hurdlers from the ground, shed without mercy. His wife and child lie nearby, listening tea, feeding frenzy has begun. Devils dance the carnage. They drink their fill of violence, go drunk on martyrs' blood, and the world turns so very slowly. World turns so very slowly. Bloated bodies float down river, dead and floating, dead and floating, dead and floating. No one knows the horrors here.
One of the greatest fears I have, when we covered this in both Watchers 9 and my book by the same title, Days of Chaos, it's a fear of an EMP, an electromagnetic pulse weapon being used against the U.S. mainland. Recently, this terrifying scenario is once again being talked about. We must understand that under the Obama administration, our country has grown weaker, and we are perceived as weak to many of our enemies. Is this the reason why so many generals have come out and endorsed Donald J. Trump? They know that we are vulnerable, and they are alarmed at our current weakness. We have real enemies in this world. Kim Jong-un, the supreme leader in North Korea, who, by the way, is treated as a living god, has threatened a nuclear war with us. Iran has basically stated the same, threatening to nuke the great Satan. An EMP would be far too easy to deploy in our country, and the effects would be devastating. An EMP would render completely useless everything with an on and off switch. In other words, the world as we know it would cease to exist. Millions of people would die in the first few weeks, and I would posit we would see our country descend into a Mad Max type of lawlessness. Then we have the ongoing war in the Middle East. I think we are looking at World War III. Putin is backing Syria's President Bashar al-Assad, and along with the Iranians are taking back the war-torn city of Aleppo. The carnage is almost beyond words, and the fighting has displaced millions of people. By the way, so far the Obama administration has allowed less than 0.5% of Christians from Syria into our country. The exact numbers are something like 12,000 Muslims to 67 Christians. Unbelievable. There is an agenda in this establishment, and many Americans think it is to our detriment. Then there's the Deutsche Bank in Germany. Is it about to collapse? If it does, it might create a chain reaction throughout the financial world. As of the special PPS report, people cannot access their savings. Donald Trump has stated that the USA is on the verge of some type of financial collapse. With a $20 trillion debt, there is simply no way to pay it back. Once again, I will call your attention to the upcoming election. If Hillary is elected, we will see the national debt go up, as well as more taxes, and in my opinion, the complete decimation of the middle class as we know it. I could make a case here how this is being deliberately orchestrated. We are in the land of media manipulation, and I want to take a moment and show you an interview I did recently with radio host Josh Tolley. Josh was at both the RNC and the DNC conventions, and the two conventions couldn't be more disjunct. Listen to Josh as he explains what happened at the DNC. Remember, it was proven that the DNC chair, Debbie Wasserman, who stepped down, in my opinion, in disgrace, rigged the elections in favor of her crony, Hillary Clinton. Folks, in my opinion, the system is rigged, and it doesn't matter a hoot what the voter does. The superdelegates and the Washington elites will have their way. This is why they are against Donald J. Trump. He's an outsider. And in my opinion, if Trump is elected, he just might clean house. Here's the interview I just did with Josh Tolley. Josh, once again, thanks so much for coming on the record with us. You and I were talking before this interview, and you were at both the RNC convention and, of course, the DNC.
Yes.
This year, 2016. Tell us the disparity between the conventions and what you witnessed, what you saw.
Well, first off, I think both parties are part of the system. I think it's WWE, so I just want to state that out front. But there was a stark difference. At the RNC, as a media or a credentialed member of the media, we had access to everything. We could go to every floor, every room, just everywhere. And it was interesting. You know, there were some things with Trump that were kind of curious. But then when you went to the DNC, we have to check in with the Secret Service. And we got the same Secret Service agent in Philly that we had in Cleveland. And he told us right up front, he goes, "I'm sorry, but you're not going to like this. We didn't set the rules, the DNC did." And the first thing I noticed was that the RNC, there were cameras everywhere from all the networks and all the international media. The DNC had much fewer cameras that all the networks had to pull off of. And I started thinking, well, wait a second, if you control the camera, you control the feed.
Sure.
So that was the first red flag. The second red flag is that everybody in the media, whether it was NBC News or my show, everybody had much limited restrictions. You couldn't go everywhere. You couldn't get to the candidates. Even floor access was limited in the amount of time you could be on the floor. So that was concerning. But then what really got interesting is when I'm sitting on the floor right there in the convention, and I can see a TV screen that is going out to the world. This is what the people at home were watching. And I'm looking at this screen, and I'm looking at the audience. I'm looking at the screen, I'm looking at the audience. They don't match. There were fewer people in the real room than were on TV. And I think, oh my gosh, not only are they restricting the media, they're faking it. And then there were two instances beyond that that really sent a shiver down my spine. The first one was when Sarah Silverman and Al Franken were on stage.
Right.
And at home, you heard cheers and applause. But Sarah Silverman says something really interesting. She says, "You're being ridiculous. You cut it out," or something to that effect. I'm thinking, wait a second. Why is she getting mad at the audience, right? Well, I was live and on the floor. What was happening in the room was the Democrats were chanting, "Lock her up, lock her up."
Of course, pointing to Hillary Clinton.
Exactly.
Yeah, wow.
So I'm thinking, wait a second, everybody at home thinking, oh, everybody's cheering and Sarah Silverman is somehow being mean. The reality is everybody in the room was saying, "Lock her up," and Sarah Silverman was saying, "How dare you be so ridiculous?" And then the second thing that really shocked me is, when they go from state to state and everybody pledges their delegates and it's ceremonious, and they go to California, and the California delegates are so proud to get behind the candidate, and then what really happened was those were actors. Those weren't even real. The real delegates had tape across their mouth and they wrote "silenced by the DNC."
Wow.
So this illusion that somehow she's winning, even amongst her own party, is a lie.
So this whole idea of free elections and the democratic system is basically a joke. Is that what you're telling us?
Oh, it is a joke.
Okay.
It is a joke. Best case scenario, it's a tail wags the dog sort of situation.
Right.
Put something out there and make everybody believe it. Worst case scenario, she's going to win this thing and not really win this thing. But they presented such an image of, oh, she's only 2 points down or 2 points up. But if you think about it, have you seen any supporters? I have not seen one supporter ever, even at the DNC, other than the cronies that they put out before you.
Right.
I haven't met a natural Hillary supporter, and I don't see signs anywhere. I don't see bumper stickers. Where are they?
Very, very interesting. So this is a controlled environment.
Yeah.
This is managed, and we know that Debbie Wasserman Schultz stepped down in disgrace, basically, because of what she did and she's completely manipulating everything. Bernie Sanders seemed to have beaten Hillary Clinton in many of the primaries, but those primaries in which he won actually went to her with a coin toss.
Right.
So this is a managed agenda, as our friend Chuck Missler would say. Let me just ask you something here.
Yeah.
There are people, and this is an expression I've sort of coined as of late. There's a feeling, an overwhelming feeling that we are being herded. And if you don't like the word feeling, we can give, there's an overwhelming thought process by looking at everything that's going on around us that leads one to believe that we, the American people, in fact even the globe, are being herded. Your thoughts?
Absolutely. People ask me all the time, are we involved in some sort of precursor to martial law? The reality is, LA,
yes.
We're in martial law.
Oh, wow.
What's the purpose of an internment camp? It was to keep track of people so you knew what they were up to.
Now everybody knows.
Now everybody
Facebook.
knows. Everybody knows. You can't leave the country without permission. You can't come back into the country without permission. You can't buy a home without permission. You can't change the toilet in your house without permission. They now have devices outside toilets, and they don't need a warrant to test what you're flushing, so they know your DNA, your health condition, and they don't need a warrant because you're voluntarily giving that information back to the public sewer system. They don't need to put up a fence. And what I tell people is a fence is kind of like a fence to a dog. Before, we had fences that kept dogs in. Now there's electronic fences.
Right.
And the dog doesn't even know it's there. The dog thinks, hey, I'm free, until you try to cross it, and then wham, they zap you. And that's where we are now.
Wow.
We think we're free. We're saying, well, we're not under martial law until boots are marching down the street. They don't need it. They don't need that anymore. So, yeah.
So here we are in the 2016 election, less than 40 days away now. What are your thoughts regarding a Hillary presidency versus a Trump presidency?
regardless of who wins, I guarantee you the government's getting bigger. The only choice we're really making is, are we going to get bigger in a nationalist way or bigger in a globalist way? If we get bigger in a nationalist way, at least it provides the opportunity for victory. If we get bigger in a globalist way, hold on to your hat, because it is over. Yeah. Everything you fear is coming. And it's not hidden. There's nothing else standing in their way. And heaven forbid, she appoints Obama to either the Supreme Court or he gets the head of the UN.
Yeah, I think he's going to the UN.
Yeah. But either one of them is terrible.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if Hillary gets in, prophecy is coming to life. If Donald gets in, it's still big government, but at least I think we have a chance of working to restore.
Josh Tolley, thanks so much for coming on the record. Appreciate it. Prophecy is coming alive, and many of us who are called watchmen are crying out, stating that the time is short. I do believe we are in the midst of what I have come to call a cosmic regime change. In other words, the God of this world, who has ruled this planet ever since the fall of the Garden of Eden, is about to be deposed. This is why we are seeing the signs that Jesus warned us about coming to life. The good news in all of this is that the King of Kings is going to return, and I believe it soon. What we are experiencing are the birth pains, which will give birth, eventually, to a period unlike any other time in human history. It's called the time of Jacob's trouble, or the Great Tribulation. As a dispensationalist, I firmly believe we will not be here for this, as we will rise and meet the Lord of hosts in the air. This, of course, is our blessed hope. Here's a clip from Watchers 9, Days of Chaos, and see for yourself if it's business as usual or something more.
Let me tell you, the people don't trust you, and the people don't trust the media.
Climate change constitutes a serious threat to global security.
والله ايه ده بنت حمد بن جاسم.
And soon you will see what you will not believe. Look the guns, machines in their hands. All of those are Hamas. Look, they are surrounding them. For playing songs in a wedding.
Shocking him out. Look, he's shocking him out. Look, he keeps tasing him. Call the police.
For over 2,000 years we've been warned. Is this the end of days? Are ancient prophecies being fulfilled?
Wars and rumors of wars.
Hezbollah is Iran's poodle, but they do have 100,000 rockets. Even if Iron Dome intercepts 90% of them, you're talking about 10,000 rockets hitting Israel's population centers.
In only 2 years, we've seen 4 blood moons, the solar eclipse, and in Israel, the end of the Shemitah. Does this spell financial collapse for America and perhaps the rest of the world?
It's a banking takeover, man. How much more proof do people need?
While this video about the Messiah has gone viral, rabbis in Israel are further investigating the Hebrew calendar year 5776, which corresponds to 2016. Meanwhile, right here at home, we have really big problems.
Absolute out of control insanity.
Absolutely no clothes on?
No! I'm in the fucking shower! What is wrong with you?
Horrifically, Planned Parenthood seems to classify that an unborn child is worth more in pieces than alive.
Things are crush below, I'm gonna crush above, and I'm gonna see that kid out intact.
Because the kidney has value, because the liver has value, because the lungs have value, because the muscles in the legs have value. I would tell you that child has value.
Sightings of UFOs worldwide have become even stranger and more bizarre. Richard Shaw does an in-depth analysis of the aliens in the Kumburga's UFO. You won't believe what he found hidden in the original footage. In a desolate, forgotten place in Iran, a mysterious guest has appeared and is dictating the words of a very ancient and well-known text.
Yes, a man comes every night wearing all white. Guess what he had? The whole book of John.
Gary Stearman and Bill Salas are back with new prophetic insights. They're joined by Chief Joseph Riverwind, who gives a very unique perspective from a Native American point of view. What do they know that we don't? You'll also learn about a huge effort underway in Israel right now to rebuild the Third Temple. We interviewed Alvin Conway from the Extinction Protocol, who gave us hard evidence that earthquakes and volcanoes are reaching historic levels.
But I think everybody is in agreement that the planet is headed for some very, very, very dark days.
Dr. Brooks Agnew returns, and this time he's giving us information about Jade Helm.
This operation has HELM added to it. And what I understand that acronym stands for is Homeland Eradication of Local Militia.
He also weighs in on what an electromagnetic pulse weapon, an EMP, is all about. What would happen if the bees died off and the 7-year drought continues in California? Would this in fact create a cascading event? Finally, we are told men will think from fear for what is coming upon the earth. Is Planet X real? The topic just won't go away. Researcher Gil Broussard joins us. He spent years researching the Planet X phenomenon, specifically from the viewpoint of ancient biblical texts. Could we see Planet X arrive in 2015?
Calling Dr. Brooks Agnew.
Hey, ma'am. I really appreciate you coming. We're 3 stories underground here in a storage area. It's a good place to talk.
All this great shielding around us.
You know, a lot of people in the United States have grown leery of our own government. And over the summer, there was this Jade Helm operation in the southern states, and it alarmed so many people that even in Texas, they had a counter group to monitor these guys. What do you know about that?
Well, quite a bit. I mean, Jade operations have been around since about 2001.
Okay.
It's
And that's just a military parlance?
It's just military practice on civilian property.
All right.
I've gone to one of the events, and it was really quite entertaining to watch. All the blue armbands and red armbands, and they have these mock military exercises, and it was for public consumption. But this operation has HELM added to it. And what I understand that acronym stands for is Homeland Eradication of Local Militia. Now this adds a little different dimension.
It certainly does.
They advertised it as covering 5 states, but there are 13 states that have reported HELM activities in them. They're installing razor wire, which is not a temporary operation. That's a permanent operation. No one's going to go out there and gather up all that razor wire when it's over.
The military says it's just training soldiers for the realities of war. Critics say the Army is preparing for modern-day martial law.
Reporting from the Springdale Walmart, or the closed-down Walmart in Ohio. I want people to notice I'm on the back side of the compound, and this wire runs a lot farther than just the old Walmart.
They're also incorporating something way different this time, and that's it. They're taking an already militarized local police force, and they're weaving it into the operation.
This is their little complex. The sun's in the way. It's an underground facility. It's like a base. That's the top of it. Why in the hell This Walmart Supercenter need that. See the Walmart trucks? And I worked in this little white building here. See, it's like military style entrance, kind of like a FEMA camp.
This is not for operations in Afghanistan or Syria. Or,
It's right here.
Exactly.
Let me ask you this, with that in mind. I mean, I'll just give you 3 quick scenarios that I can think of. Terrorists coming up to the southern border, which still remains porous, and at the same time uniting with terrorists here in the States, which may have dirty nukes smuggled over in the 90s. There's books on that. We've got enemies that may use an electromagnetic pulse weapon.
For the last 20 years, we've been coordinating our national power grid. That coordination has to happen if you're going to share power from one side of the country to the other. Power is generated in 3 phases. In order to put that power on a grid that can be used, say, in Florida, that's
Sure.
generated in North Carolina,
Okay.
that phase has to be matched perfectly. Otherwise, you get feedback and heats up the lines and creates havoc across the grid. So when this occurred, the management of the grid had to be unified, had to be organized. There's a federal contractor that takes care of that, the National Electrical Reliability Corporation. They held a symposium because they realized once this was done, it created a set of really unique vulnerabilities. So there were 3 of them. One was against cyber attack or physical attack. The other was against to compensate for natural disasters, hurricanes, earthquakes,
Sure.
solar flares, things like that.
So they're being really proactive, very much so. Because
they
they know
are.
something is coming, right? I mean,
Yeah,
is that-
but they've
is that
created their own
paranoid or-
vulnerability.
Okay.
They didn't have that vulnerability before when we had separate regions of Vista, PG&E, Duke. They had their own systems and they didn't cross. But now they're all intertangled with one
How
another.
easy would it be for, let's say, North Korea or just a rogue nation like North Korea or a terrorist group to launch an EMP?
Well, we were discussing this the other day, and I draw on my old Air Force training. The original attack motif in those days was a high altitude EMP, which would knock out communications and low-level power management systems for about 6 hours.
If you're interested in finding more about this subject, please go to our website and order Watchers 9 and my book, The Days of Chaos. I think you'll find it informative and really stimulating and riveting information. These days are, in my opinion, tumultuous, tenuous, and unprecedented. And we need to come to grips with what is going on. Don't be what I call an ostrich person and keep your head in the sand. Let's all come to an understanding that all the things that we see was actually prophesied thousands of years ago. And what we read in our Bibles is the truth. Remember, Jesus told us that when we see these things begin to happen, we are to look up because our redemption, our blessed hope, is coming. Folks, if you're at all interested, please go to www.lamarzulli.net, lamarzulli.net, and order Days of Chaos Watchers 9, and of course my book by the same title, Days of Chaos. Remember, I'll see you on the air or in the air.